video 2 for the Hail Cage facts and design. And I left off last time talking about the diamond shapes that were in the expanded metal that we were thinking about going with, but we realized that it was just going to be way too heavy for our setup. So we went with this mesh. It's a little less durable, I would say, but it allows us to, one, we can replace it really easily. Instead of welding it to the actual frame, we can just put these zip ties on it. And then if zip ties corrode or they have problems, we just replace them cheaply and quickly. And if we have any kind of damage that takes place to the actual mesh itself, we can easily just snip off all of these and then replace the mesh. So that's the cheapness and the ability to replace things and the ease of being able to replace things are some of the reasons why we went with the smaller gauge wire mesh instead of something tougher and denser. Now let's talk about our reason for going with these polycarbonate side sheets. We had gone through a couple phases of development with these. We had been going back and forth a lot, and the initial design that Pep and I were talking about was we were going to have really thin pieces of polycarbonate, and they were going to be like a foundational piece, and we were actually going to slide them up into the seam of the window. So you'd almost like roll the window down and sort of roll them up into the window and put them down into the seam. And each one would be the size of the window it was protecting, and they would have a riser on them. I don't know what we would necessarily use, but something dense yet cushiony that would rise up off of the maybe 5 areas that would rise up off of that piece of polycarbonate. Then you would have the thicker piece of polycarbonate covering that, and that would be the actual thing that would take the brunt force or whatever was coming down, the hail or whatever it happened to be. So that seemed like way too much work to me. And it seemed like trying to, you're next to a hail core and you have 4 different window sheets that you have to get out and rolling down the window and rolling them back up. It didn't seem realistic, like it was actually going to work. So we went from that idea to an idea of having some kind of fold down piece. But at the time, we were considering some other designs and the fold down piece didn't seem to work. So what we started talking about was some kind of track, a wheel track, almost like you would get on a cabinet, or I'm sorry, I should say a drawer, just like in your kitchen or something like that. And actually the polycarbonate would be on that. And you'd be sitting inside the car, maybe I'm driving, and you'd actually pull it out and swing it down next to the side of the car, and then sweep them apart. As if you've been in one of those showers and they have the shower doors that one's in front of the other, and you can kind of slide them back and forth. So they were going to be slid 2 pieces of polycarbonate, one on top of the other. You would slide this out from the wheel tracks, lay it against the side of the car, and then you would, I don't know, maybe have some handles, and then you would open it up, slide it open, and there you go. The problem was we needed a locking mechanism to keep them open, and we needed to keep it against the car, so we were talking about magnets and using some kind of magnet to like seal it against the car. But that idea, we slowly talked ourselves out of it. And once we finally got this full design, we realized that these polycarbonate sheets were going to be the best way to do it. You just have one thing that you're folding down. It covers all of the expanse of the window, except of course we've got, maybe 6 to 8 inches right here, and the rear view mirror isn't going to be covered that well, but I'm not too worried about that because we've got such a large portion of it covered. Even right here, we might have a few inches, 3 inches right here, but still we don't have any windows right here, and because of the angle, anything that's coming down is probably going to hit these or hit the side of the main frame. So we decided to go with this design, and we went around and around with how we were going to hold these down. Because if you're driving at 50 and you have nothing to hold these down, you're going to start getting this flying effect taking place. And so we went through a bunch of different ideas where we would just have, we went through like just straps that you might strap something down with your vehicle, and we would have them hooked to here, and then you would just strap it, and you'd have to open up the car and then just toss it in there and tighten it and shut the door on it. And oh man, we came up with a bunch of different things that we knew they wouldn't work out. Magnets, just putting a whole bunch of magnets along the edge so it would suck against the side of the car. Not going to happen. Over time, we finally worked these out. And at first, these were ingenious. They were a great idea. These U's, you would just put down and cover the polycarbonate sheet on either side, and it would fit right in there. It wouldn't go anywhere. It was a great idea. As you can see now, that's not going to work because of the angle that we have. But still, it's a great idea for keeping the polycarbonate from flying away from the side of the car. Some of the more minor things that we did was that we designed a frame for the polycarbonate, because when you first get the polycarbonate, it is very loose and wobbly, and you get a lot of play. So we had to create some kind of a frame for it. So we created the frame and we put the angle iron at the bottom, and that's really stiffened it up so it's acted pretty solid so far. Only a slight bit of wobble you can really get. And as you can see, that's not even really wobble, that's just movement from this hinge to that hinge. And as for these hinges, if you take a look at them, they tend to eat up and work on this main hail cage right here. I mean, you can really see that it's getting all these scratches, it's getting torn up, especially this one back here. You can just see it's getting worked, but this aluminized steel is so tough that I'm really not worried about. Yeah, it messed up my spray paint job, but I can live with that. We toyed with putting some kind of rubber seal, or I don't know, like a leather strap in here to keep it smooth and it actually create some stiffness when you're folding it up and down. But we found it was more of a pain in the ass to put that in there and try to get it working than it was just to have it somewhat loose but not really create that much of a problem. I mean, the design isn't absolutely perfect. You can see that we're missing about 1/4 of an inch of space right here. It's not even actually touching the mainframe. But the front is basically on there, and the back is full on. So it's doing the job good enough. And that's really what we're looking for. Let me mention these back here as well. We toyed around with the angle to have these hinges. So the hinges that we've used, you can see that these are bolted in, or really I shouldn't say they're bolted in, they're just screwed in right here to keep them at this angle. But we wanted them at a particular angle where, one, we would get maybe an extra inch. So because you can see our design is really close to the trunk back here, we've only got about an inch or so before it would actually be on the window. So what we wanted is we wanted to gain an inch of space right there, and we wanted this to fold back up, and with the piece of polycarbonate we wanted it to be totally flat. So when we put it back up there, you can see the thing that's become the problem is the foam noodle, but really it's not that big of a deal. We only have a slight angle there, and it's not making any kind of a major problem. Nothing's getting caught up. None of the mesh is getting caught up on any of the corners back here with the angle iron. Same thing with the front. Fold down. You get a little bit of an angle there, so it's not perfect, but really I prefer, instead of having these vertical, I prefer to have them at about a 45-degree angle. So again, you can see it's a little more dramatic in the front. I mean, we're right at the edge here. If it were 2 inches less, we'd be sitting on top of the windshield wipers, and that would obviously create a problem for us. So we got the dimensions down just right, so it covered the things that we wanted it to cover, and it didn't actually impinge on any moving parts. And it even gave us, especially on the back, on the side, or I should say on the back windows, not really on the side, back and front window, it gave us a little bit of play, so that just because right here you're not going to have any protection from any hail that's falling at an angle, you can see that because we decided to go with the front and rear fold downs being the same as the main frame, we gained about 1 foot of space on the side, so that the back and front windows are actually going to be protected in case we had some hail coming in at if you have RFD bringing some baseball size hail down, you're going to get a pretty radical angle on it. So Fortunately, I think with this design, we're not going to have anything that's really going to come up under here, unless, you know, maybe it were debris or anything, but I'm not obviously worried about that. So I think our angle is pretty solid there. So that's why, I mean, it's adding more weight, but that's why we just went ahead and made the front and rear fold downs, followed the same size as the main frame. It makes it look smoother, it looks sleek, and we get a little bit more protection for really not that much weight added. Let's see. Last things that I want to mention, we've already talked about the crossbars and how this is set up on the car. Last thing I wanted to mention is why we went with these crossbars. The carriage bolts right here, I really like the idea of those. And usually with store-bought crossbars, you don't really, those things are so expensive, you don't really want to mess with them. You don't want to drill through them or anything like that. So just buying a 1 by 1 inch square piece of aluminum metal as our crossbar, and then just drilling through it worked out really well for us. So we were just able to put this thing on, and since we have it dialed in so well, you just drop the carriage bolt right in there and it'll just sink right in. And then you can spin these on there, and really, besides the fact that this thing weighs so much, you can get this dialed in and hooked onto the top within just a matter of a couple minutes. So it's pretty great. Other than that, I can't really think of any other specific design pieces that I want to mention. So if you have any questions, feel free to post something on YouTube, or try to contact me through Tornado Alley Chasing, and I'll try to give you some more of the specifics on the actual design that we have. But really, you guys have gotten a really good view of it. And again, look at the other videos in the series. We're going to go through each development. We're going to see how we've gone through and built and designed each little thing. So it'll probably be maybe 15 videos, each only a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.